So this is this broader question that we hear a lot: is Trump special or is he normal, right? And I think Trump is special in some ways. He's special in the way that he dismisses multilateralist institutions. He's special in the way that he dismisses allies. He really puts his sole focus on bilateral relations. He's looking at it in a clear cost-benefit analysis at the US relations in the world, and he's dismissing 70 years of US statecraft by saying that the world order that the US has built actually doesn't benefit the US. I think that is a break with the tradition of US presidents that we've had in the past. At the same time, I also think that Trump is not an aberration. I think that he is a continuation of a US retreat and retrenchment from its role in the world. Certainly, he's continuing the tradition of US presidents to say that they no longer want to be the sole responsibles for European security. They're asking European allies to step up and do more. And I think that this is going to continue as a trend even when Trump is no longer in office. And Europeans, I'm afraid, are still somewhat in denial of this trend. So we have seen a big development in European defense structures and European defense initiatives. That has partly to do with the election of President Trump. It has partly to do with the UK decision to exit the European Union. But I think it's, again, a broader, more long-term trend. Certainly the EU will be at pains to say that this is not just a reaction to Donald Trump. This is a reaction to the threats that we are facing on our own borders, and that this precedes the election of Donald Trump. But we can see that with the weakening of NATO, maybe not necessarily the actual weakening of NATO, because we have seen the US continue to invest in defense under NATO, but certainly a weakening of the perception of the US commitment to NATO in Europe. Europeans are starting to consider alternatives a lot more. And the EU has come to the foreground in that context. We're discussing a lot the idea of European strategic autonomy, which is a somehow undefined concept, because I think the main problem is that Europeans can't really agree on a threat perception. They can't really agree what is the purpose of their autonomy, what do they want to do with their autonomy. But certainly some of the initiatives that we've seen in the last years are very promising. Most importantly, I think on the industrial side of things, with the European Defence Fund, with PESCO, we have seen attempts of Europeans to strengthen their defence industrial base to get the capabilities that we so sorely lack. The only thing that we now need is a clearly defined level of ambition and a shared idea of what we want to use these capabilities for. Germany has been very heavily involved in the EU initiatives on defense in the last couple of years. But Germany comes at these initiatives with a very different vision, with a very different interest than, for example, France comes at them. And I think for Germany, European defense is above all an integration project. It's above all about furthering European integration, and defense is just one tool to do that. That is very laudable and very noble. The problem with that is that you focus less on military output. You focus less on operations, you focus less on the final military and defense interests of these initiatives. What Germany is trying to do with, for example, an initiative like PESCO, is trying to unify. It always has this idea of inclusive initiatives where every country can participate. The downside of that is that you get less ambitious initiatives that are actually able to do less because you have so many different countries with different capabilities and different threat perceptions. And then there's, of course, the ever-looming defense budget in Germany, and this idea that Germany needs to invest much more in its own armed forces than it is currently doing. I think the domestic debate on 2% will be disappointing to anyone who's hoping for big strides from Germany in this context. We're seeing some marginal increases, but nowhere near the golden ticket of 2% of GDP defense spending. This is all to be seen, I think, in a broader debate within Germany about our defense identity, about our identity as a security and foreign policy player in Europe, which has started, some would say, in 2014 with some speeches about Germany needing to take more responsibility, and which is far from being over. I think we're at the beginning of a big conversation that Germany has to have with itself, that political elites have to have with their own public. And then once we've had that conversation, we need to reform a lot. We need to reform all the little boring things like our procurement systems, like the way that we structure our military. So we're at the beginning of a process that I think is going to last at least a decade, if not longer.